My siblings thought they cut me out of the will. Joke's on them, I got the real fortune. Sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who hurt you the most. My own siblings thought they were so clever, scheming behind my back to steal what was rightfully mine. They celebrated too early, throwing parties and making plans with money they thought they'd stolen from me. But karma has a funny way of balancing the scales, and revenge, as they say, is a dish best served cold. My name is Ethan, and this is the story of how my greedy siblings tried to cut me out of our father's will, only to discover they'd been playing checkers while I was playing chess. What started as a family tragedy became the most satisfying comeback of my life, and honestly, I'm still smiling about it 2 years later. Let me paint you a picture of my family dynamic. I'm the middle child of 3, my older sister Bianca is 35, I'm 32, and my younger brother Troy is 29. Growing up, I was always the odd one out. While Bianca excelled academically and Troy was the golden boy athlete, I was the creative type who spent my time writing, painting, and what my family called wasting time with artsy nonsense. Our father William was a successful construction company owner who built his empire from nothing. He was a traditional man who valued hard work and practical skills. Bianca became a lawyer, Troy joined the family business, and I became a freelance graphic designer and part-time novelist. You can imagine how well that went over at family dinners. The divide between me and my siblings grew wider over the years. They saw me as the family disappointment, the one who couldn't hold down a real job. Every family gathering became an opportunity for subtle digs about my career choices. "Still playing with crayons, Ethan?" Troy would joke. "When are you going to grow up and get a real job?" Bianca would add with that condescending lawyer smile. But here's what they didn't know. I wasn't struggling. My graphic design business was thriving. I had several published novels, and I'd been quietly investing in cryptocurrency and tech stocks since 2015. I kept my financial success to myself because, frankly, I enjoyed watching them underestimate me. When Dad started showing signs of dementia at 68, everything changed. Suddenly, Veronica and Derek became the most devoted children you'd ever seen. They visited constantly, took him to appointments, and made sure everyone knew how much they were sacrificing for dear old Dad. Meanwhile, I continued my regular visits, just as I had for years, but without the fanfare. I noticed something during this time. Dad's lucid moments were becoming more precious, and during these moments, he would often pull me aside. "Ethan," he'd say, "you're the only one who visits me because you want to, not because you want something." Those words stuck with me, but I had no idea how prophetic they would become. 8 months before Dad passed away, I started noticing changes in how my siblings treated me. They became secretive, ending conversations when I walked into rooms, sharing knowing looks across the dinner table. Troy started making comments about deadbeat siblings who don't contribute to the family, while Bianca would lecture about financial responsibility and family obligations. The real betrayal happened 3 months before Dad's death. I arrived at his house for our weekly chess game to find Bianca and Troy there with a lawyer I didn't recognize. They quickly shuffled papers away when I entered, claiming they were just handling some business matters for Dad. But I saw enough to know they were working on legal documents, and the look of guilt on Troy's face told me everything I needed to know. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong. I called Dad's longtime attorney, Mr. Peterson, who had been handling our family's legal matters for over 20 years. What he told me made my blood run cold. "Ethan," he said carefully, "your father came in last month with your siblings and a new attorney. He seemed confused and kept asking where you were. They said you couldn't make it, and that they were handling everything. I was concerned because he signed some documents updating his will, but he seemed not entirely present, if you know what I mean." I knew exactly what he meant. Dad's dementia had been getting worse, and there were days when he couldn't remember my name. My siblings had taken advantage of one of his bad days to manipulate him into changing his will. Dad passed away peacefully in his sleep on a Tuesday morning in October. The funeral was everything you'd expect. somber, well-attended, and filled with people sharing stories about what a great man he was. But I noticed how Veronica and Derek kept exchanging these subtle, satisfied smiles throughout the service. They thought they'd won. The will reading was scheduled for the following Friday. I sat in that law office, surrounded by my smirking siblings, as the new attorney, a friend of Bianca's from law school, began reading Dad's final wishes. According to the document, the house, the business, and the bulk of Dad's $2.3 million estate were to be divided equally between Bianca and Troy. I was left with a measly $10,000 and some of Dad's old books. The moment we left that law office, my siblings couldn't contain their glee. Troy actually laughed out loud and said, "Well, Ethan, maybe now you'll understand the value of hard work and family loyalty." Bianca was more subtle but equally cruel. Dad knew who really cared about the family business and who just wanted a handout. They didn't even try to hide their celebration. That weekend, Troy threw a party at his house, calling it a memorial gathering, but really celebrating his inheritance. They made plans to sell the family business to a competitor for even more money. Bianca started shopping for a new house, and Troy bought a ridiculously expensive sports car. They were spending money they thought was theirs, and I just watched, waiting for the perfect moment. Here's where the story gets delicious. Remember Mr. Peterson, Dad's longtime attorney? Well, it turns out that 3 weeks before Dad died, during one of his lucid periods, he had called Mr. Peterson privately. Dad was suspicious about the document he'd signed with my siblings and their lawyer friend. He couldn't remember exactly what he'd signed, but something felt wrong. So Dad did something brilliant. He created a second will with Mr. Peterson, his real final will. This document revoked any previous wills and laid out his true intentions. But here's the kicker. Dad included a clause that if anyone contested the will or tried to manipulate it, they would forfeit their inheritance entirely. The real will was much different. I inherited the house, 60% of his liquid assets, and most importantly, his entire collection of first edition books and manuscripts, which my siblings thought was just some old junk he'd left me as an insult. 6 months after Dad's death, just as my siblings were finalizing the sale of the business and living high on their inherited money, Mr. Peterson contacted me. It was time to reveal Dad's true will. We scheduled a meeting with Bianca and Troy, telling them it was about some minor estate matters that needed to be resolved. The look on their faces when Mr. Peterson began reading Dad's actual final will was priceless. Troy's cocky smirk disappeared first, replaced by confusion, then horror. Bianca, ever the lawyer, immediately started arguing about the validity of the document, but Mr. Peterson had covered every legal base. But the real shock came when I revealed what those worthless books Dad had left me were actually worth. Among his collection were several extremely rare first editions, including a 1960 first edition of To Kill a Mockingbird and a signed first edition of The Great Gatsby. The entire collection was appraised at over $800,000. The best part? Since my siblings had already spent a significant portion of their inheritance, they now owed the estate money. Troy's sports car had to be sold, and Bianca had to back out of her house purchase. The business sale fell through when the buyers discovered the ownership dispute, and the legal fees from trying to contest Dad's real will ate up most of what they had left. Meanwhile, I was sitting pretty with the house I'd grown up in, a substantial inheritance, and a rare book collection worth more than my siblings had ever dreamed of. But more than the money, I had something they'd never have. The knowledge that Dad had seen through their manipulation and chose to trust me with his true legacy. The aftermath was exactly what you'd expect. Troy was furious, calling me every name in the book and accusing me of manipulating Dad. Bianca tried the legal route, hiring attorneys to contest the will, but Dad and Mr. Peterson had been thorough. Every I was dotted, every T was crossed. The family business, which Troy had been so eager to sell, ended up being donated to a local trade school in Dad's name, another provision in his real will. Dad wanted to help other kids learn practical skills, just like he had when he started with nothing. My siblings barely speak to me now, which honestly has made family gatherings much more pleasant. They see me as the villain in their story, but I sleep soundly knowing that Dad's true wishes were honored. This whole experience taught me several valuable lessons. First, never underestimate the quiet ones. While my siblings were making noise about their devotion, I was building genuine relationships. Second, karma really is real, and it's more creative than any revenge you could plan yourself. But most importantly, I learned that sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't money or property. It's the knowledge that someone you loved saw your true character and trusted you when it mattered most. 2 years later, I'm still living in the family home, which I've converted partly into an art studio. I've published 3 more novels, and my graphic design business is better than ever. The rare book collection sits in Dad's old study, exactly where he would have wanted it. Sometimes I catch myself smiling when I think about that moment in the lawyer's office when my siblings realized they'd been outsmarted by the man they thought they'd manipulated. They played a short game focused on quick gains, while Dad was playing the long game, protecting his legacy and rewarding the child who truly cared about family, not just family money. So that's my story, how my siblings thought they'd cut me out of the will, only to discover that the joke was on them all along. Have you ever experienced family betrayal or seen karma work its magic in your own life? Share your stories in the comments below. I'd love to hear how justice found its way to you. If you enjoyed this story of family drama and sweet revenge, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more Reddit stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Trust me, the truth really is stranger than fiction, and I've got plenty more where this came from.